Thank you very much for the introduction, and thanks a lot for the invitation to this very interesting discussion this afternoon. For me, actually, I think it is the first meeting, physical meeting since COVID, so very excited. I almost forgot what it was. All right. So today, what I'd like to mention is, well, basically a little bit of context about the EU policy and Food 2030, and then I will say a couple of words on what's keeping us very busy these days, Horizon Europe. Okay, so the EU policy context, well, obviously, this is about the European Green Deal and the Farm to Fork strategy. So the Farm to Fork strategy is really one of the key elements of the European Green Deal. It really addresses comprehensively the challenges of sustainable food systems by recognizing the link in between healthy people, healthy planet, and healthy societies. So the overarching goal of the Farm to Fork strategy is to get sustainable food systems, but sustainable on all three pillars: economic, social, and environmental. So the economic dimension includes elements you have more on this slide, but it can include elements such as jobs and incomes. The social aspects includes elements such as healthier diets, but also better animal welfare, and also just transition for everybody in the food systems. While the environmental, let's say, pillar, well, basically it implies a food system that is in harmony with its environment. And so, for example, with less greenhouse gases, and enhanced biodiversity. These are just a couple of examples. Okay, so the Farm to Fork strategy has four general goals. The first one is about reducing the environmental and climate footprint of the EU food systems. Another one is about leading the global transition towards competitive sustainability from farm to fork, and also to tap into new opportunities. Another one is about strengthening the resilience, very important word on food systems, of the food systems. And the last one, I would say, is about ensuring food security in the face of climate change and biodiversity loss. Food security is something that is very, very important and present those days in the political context that we live in Europe. Okay, so the Farm to Fork strategy also has four quantitative targets. You have them on this slide. So you have one on chemical pesticides, another one on nutrient losses and fertilizer, another one on antimicrobials, and the last one on organic farming. But in the strategy, there are much more than quantitative targets. There are also qualitative targets. And so, for example, these are targets about packaging or about animal welfare. So this is targets, quantitative targets included, are not legally binding, but they are very, very important when we will, for example, assess EU policies and also for the implementation of EU policies. For example, for the CAP, the member states will have to take into account both the objectives and the targets that we can find in the Farm to Fork strategy, for example, when they draft their national strategic plan. Okay, so how will we meet these objectives and achieve these targets? You have in this slide some horizontal enablers, and as you can see, research and innovation has indeed a key role to play in driving the transition towards sustainable and healthier food systems. So this is what I could say about the Farm to Fork strategy and the Green Deal, generally speaking, but of course the EU policy let's say context those days is also about this new communication that has been published in March 2022 about food security. So this communication is an answer to a call or a request from the member states, well, that's to respond to what we could find in the Versailles Declaration, to just react to what's going on in Ukraine with the war in Ukraine and Russia. So what's important to say about this communication, and that's clearly said in there, is that in Europe, in the EU, there is no food supply issue. However, the invasion of Ukraine and also a global commodity price boom are really driving up prices in agriculture and also seafood product markets. And so it really shows the vulnerability of the food systems. For example, our dependency to imports, for example, about energy, fertilizers, or animal feed. And so this has for consequence to increase the cost for producers, and so it affects the price of food, and so then it raises concerns for the purchasing power of consumers and also for the incomes of farmers. So the invasion of Ukraine really risks to have serious consequences for global food security, negatively impacting vulnerable countries and some population groups, especially vulnerable people. We can already see some impacts on the increased costs throughout the food supply chain, but also the destabilization of agricultural markets through the increases in energy and fertilizer costs, and also the disruption of trade flows from and to Ukraine and Russia, among others. But the communication is already setting or defining measures for global support for EU farmers, and also support for EU consumers. Okay, so this is what I could say about overall the EU policy context. Now I would like to say a little bit some words about Food 2030. So Food 2030 is a policy framework that has been launched during the Milan Expo in 2015. And the aim is really to have a research, innovation, food system approach. So the objective, I would say that there are three of them. To structure the EU research and innovation system by convening EU services, member states, stakeholders for research and innovation programs alignment, and also to leverage funds. Another aim is to connect the whole food value chain, so land and sea, farm to fork to gut and back, producers to consumers. The aim is really to make sure that all actors of the food systems are considered in this approach. And the last objective is about scaling up research and innovation. So that's why you will find digital aspects, some elements also about education or skills. Food 2030 also has 4 priorities. You have them here. So it's about nutrition, climate, circularity, and innovation. So in October 2020, we published not so new anymore, report about the Food 2030 pathways for action. So it's 10 pathways. You have the list of the pathways here. And so the objective that really, again, that we wanted to achieve, let's say, is really to have, again, a systemic approach involving all actors of the food system, so producers, retailers, food services, researchers, policymakers, and so on. And the aim was to have what we call co-benefits, which means benefits on all 4 objectives. So this is what you see in this table. Something else that I can mention related to the Food 2030 approach is the notion of place-based approach again. So this is quite key to both to demonstrate, to experiment, to test, also to build partnership. There is no, for example, one diet in Europe. You have the Mediterranean diet. You have very many differences across the regions in Europe. So that's why having a place-based approach where people live is actually quite important. So here, what I can simply mention is a couple of pathways that we developed. For example, there is one on healthy and sustainable personalized nutrition. There is another one on food safety, and another one on alternative proteins and dietary shifts. All of them are quite relevant for health-related issues, environmental as well, and so on. But it was just to mention a couple of them. If you are interested, you have here the link to the document online. Okay, so this is what I could say about Food 2030. Now, I'd like to say a couple of words about what we are actually working on now, Horizon Europe. So, Horizon Europe is the EU funding program for research and innovation with a budget of 95.5 billion euro. So, Horizon Europe tackles various subjects, for example, climate change, or sustainable development goals, or competitiveness, or growth. And so the objective is really to strengthen the impact of research and innovation in developing, supporting, and implementing the EU policies, also while tackling global challenges. So it is made of 3 pillars that you can find here. The one that we are working on is Pillar 2, and more specifically, Pillar 2 is made of 6 clusters, and the one that we are specifically working on is the one on food systems, so cluster 6 here. But of course, all clusters are linked. For example, you see cluster 1 on health. There are definitely some elements that are relevant for also our work on cluster 6. Okay, so let's get a little bit more technical. So cluster 6 is made of what we call intervention areas. You have the name of the intervention areas here. So we are in charge of the one on food systems here. And so, well, how do we do that? This is with the picture that you can see here. This is the link in between our initiative Food 2030 and Horizon Europe. We develop our work in intervention area on food system through the work that we actually did before on Food 2030, and we are keep working on that, of course. All right, so the work developed in each intervention areas are spread then over 7 destinations in cluster 6. So these destinations are created based on the expected impact that you can find in Horizon Europe strategic plan. This is basically a way to make a link between the strategic plan and the work program. So this is the impact in the strategic plan, and these are the destinations in the work program. So basically, food systems related goals can be found in several destinations, 3 of them for the work program 21-22, 4 of them for the current work program 23-24. So you have destination 2, which is the main one on food systems, but you also have destination 6 on, well, among other things, urban food systems, destination 7 on governance, and destination 4 on zero pollution. All right, so what's going on now? So right now, the first work program for 21 and 22 has been published. The submission of proposals for the 21 course are closed. The projects have been selected and they should start soon. For the 2022 calls, again, the submission of proposal is closed as well. It has been closed since February. And now the projects are being, or the proposals are being evaluated. So now what we are doing is actually working on the second work program. However, just keep in mind that we are not doing that on our own. Obviously, we need feedback from quite a lot of people. So that's why we are working in what we call co-creation manner, both internally with colleagues in other services of the Commission, but also externally. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, you are the experts. So that's why we are always looking for feedback from you. So if, for example, you are aware of research and innovation gaps or needs on food systems, feel free to let us know. Okay, so Horizon Europe is more than just work programs and calls and topics. Huh? It's also about partnerships. So we have a lot of them, and there is especially one on food systems. So the objective of this partnership is to collectively develop and implement an EU-wide research innovation partnership to accelerate the transition toward healthy diets that are safe and sustainably produced in resilient EU and global food system. So there are 4 areas: changing the way we eat, changing the way we provide food, changing the way we connect citizens to food, and changing the way we govern the food systems. So maybe you realize it, I need my notes for that because I am not working on the partnerships. So if you have specific questions on that, feel free to send them to me and I will make sure that my colleagues provide the answer. And last but not least, Horizon Europe is also about the missions. We have 5 missions, and especially we have one on soil, which is very, very important, obviously, for food systems. Again, if you have specific questions on that, feel free to send them to me, and my colleagues working on the soil mission will provide the answers. So I think that's it from me. Thank you very much for your attention. I hope it was useful. And if you have questions, don't hesitate. Thank you.